Are you ready?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Parishscope. I'm Pastor Chris Sansom.
And I'm Casey Doremus. I'm the creative worship director at Our Savior Lutheran.
Yeah, and I tell you what, this is like week 4 or 5 of our sound effects, and I have to admit, I really like them.
I know, I do too.
I'm having a good time with them. I even created one for tonight.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did. I can't wait to get to it. Don't worry, it's nothing too silly, nothing like this.
That's a good one, though.
I did not make that one.
Right.
But anyway, so I can't wait to get to that. But it's going to be kind of a new segment that we have for tonight. And so I'm excited about that as well. I'll explain more about that when we get there. A couple things. First of all, you'll notice my voice is still not 100%. What is this, like week 2.5, something like that? 3?
Yeah.
So my voice is still coming back. It definitely gets worse at night, which is hard for the podcast because we do this at night. So
yeah.
Anyway, if you notice my voice crackling and popping, that's what's going on with that. But I guess we should jump right in, really. So here's one of the things for me. I always tell people, like, this country is so divided on politics. It is absolutely divided on politics, and a lot of times I tell people, like, if you can't think of one good thing, from either the other party or the other person, like when you're thinking of presidential candidates and stuff, I always tell them, if you can't think of one good thing, you might actually be part of the problem. And I say that for a reason, because like almost 50% of the population is going to vote for whatever it is. And so there's got to be something about that that's good, something about that really appeals to them, and not just appeals to them because it's all awful, because if it was always awful, then nobody would ever vote for anything.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the same way goes in reverse, right? Like, so if you have a candidate that you really seem to like everything about him, it's also good to keep in mind that, you're not going to like everything about that person, and you shouldn't. You shouldn't, because quite frankly, if you do end up just liking everything about the person, like, that's a political bias. That's a huge problem. And so I saw this story, and it came out today, and it said, I'll read the headlines. It's in the Christian Post, and it's John Roberts scolds Trump in rare public statement, not an appropriate response. And the response comes from a comment that Trump made, where he called for the impeachment of a federal district judge for attempting to block the deportation of the Venezuelan gang members in the U.S. illegally.
No.
And the reason I bring this up is because I actually, from the little I've read, and I won't say I've read a lot, but I've read a little bit, I actually agree with Mr. Roberts, which means I feel like Trump did wrong. And I think it's important to kind of point some of these things out. Trump wants this judge to basically be impeached because he disagrees with him in essence. Now we all know how Trump is. He's kind of a mouth, right? And that's always been his downfall. Like I like a lot of his policies. I really don't like his mouth a lot of times. And this is like one of those examples. Like, I actually agree with what Trump is trying to do in terms of deportation. I know that's not always the most popular thing, and I know not everybody agrees with me, and I'm not asking you to, but I do agree with John Roberts' statement, scolding Trump. I don't know if it's actually a scold, but a scolding Trump. Yeah. So anyway, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I've said it there, but
so you're saying, sorry, let me, because I'm trying to understand exactly what happened, because I haven't heard about this yet. So you're saying that the judge was trying to block deporting gang members?
Yes.
Okay. And then Trump scolded him for it?
Trump called for the judge's impeachment.
Okay. And then this
and the other judge, who is a Supreme Court Chief Justice,
said that was not appropriate, or
basically saying Trump's remarks are not appropriate.
Okay. So is that Supreme Court or are they saying like it's like, is he saying that it's okay for that judge to be blocking that, or is he just saying that or is he not? Is he just
He's
arguing
not
that it was
commenting on it.
inappropriate, just the
He,
behavior?
yeah, he's not commenting on whether or not he's for or against the deportations. What he is saying is, in basic, and again, I haven't read his full statement by any stretch, so
Yeah,
I've only really read the headline and a little paragraph or two underneath. Um, so I guess in this regard, I'm headline reading, but
right, right,
anyway, but just at the forefront, just what I can read in that brief little bit, what I would say is he's commenting on Trump's comment. Basically, Trump doesn't like the fact that this judge is blocking it, and Trump, for what it's worth, Trump believes that this judge is in essence blocking the fulfillment of the law.
yeah,
Um, and I get that. I do get that. But at the same time, like, for politics to work, you have to be kind of civil. And so
right,
just if somebody does something you don't like, you don't get to just call for their impeachment, which is ultimately what Trump did. Now, again, Trump's rhetoric has always been kind of wild.
oh
So
yeah, yeah.
I don't
Well,
really think a lot of this, but at the same time, I think it's important for us, for us as Christians to realize like there's other perspectives and other points of view. And, again, you and I have both said, hey, we lean to the right, and I do.
right,
And I
right,
like Trump by and large in terms of a lot of his the
policies
stuff,
and yeah,
policies, what he's doing. But that being said, I'm also very critical of his approaches on some of these things and how he
right.
talks.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the main thing when I talk to people who are on the other side of it, maybe they lean more left. Is it seems like that's kind of the main complaint a lot of the time is his sort of the way he conducts himself,
Yes.
and I think that if he would conduct himself a little more professionally in certain ways, um, it definitely would. I don't know if it would win anybody over, but it would definitely be it'd be harder for the other side of his political party to
Yeah.
say negative things about him if he wasn't kind of going so extreme on certain things. And part of it too is I think that people uh sometimes it's like he kind of gets their goat a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, I learned this with, I have a sister who's like 12 years younger than me, and my mom has she does not have the ability not to react. So
Okay.
my sister would just walk into a room, my mom would like scold her for something she did wrong, and then my sister, just right before she'd leave the room, she'd say something really nasty, and then my mom would just go berserk, because it just was like she couldn't handle it. And I think a lot of times especially with Trump, is I feel like he will say something so outlandish and people will just go nuts about it.
Yes.
Maybe he made a comment about the WNBA, or he made a comment about this. And the only thing I think is like, stop freaking out about it, because you need to start paying attention to what's actually important.
Yeah. And
Because
again, I would agree with that.
I think that a lot of times people get really riled up on something that he said something about like the NFL years ago, and people just for weeks and weeks, that's all that was being talked about. I'm like, well, what is he doing though? Like, that doesn't actually affect like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
country and any policies or anything. What is he doing? What is he signing? What is he doing? Like, because no one's paying attention. No one's paying attention
Yeah.
anymore.
And that was kind of what he did, during his first time in office.
Yeah.
But I
And
think it's I think that, kind of, I don't want to say point and counterpoint, but
yeah,
kind of along those lines, I do think it is important, because sometimes I think when somebody like Trump gets in office and a lot of Christians tend to like him,
yeah,
then you see the problem in the other side of it, which is almost like they almost like pretend like what he says doesn't matter. And it's
right,
like, well, as Christians, we're called, we're representatives. And,
right.
Trump says that he's a Christian, which means right now he is acting in a sense from a political sphere, as a representative saying, yes, I'm a Christian. Look, we had the same complaint with Biden, by the way,
Yeah,
who said he was a Catholic, but then was heavily pro-abortion. And
yeah,
you're kind of like, well, how can you be a Catholic and pro-abortion? And I think with Trump, we run into the same problem is like, you know, I mean, look, again, I like a lot of Trump's policies, but I am not going to sit around and try to make the argument that he is some great Christian.
Right.
Um,
Oh no,
I'm not
I
saying
don't
he's a
either.
non,
You
I'm
know.
not saying he's a non-Christian, but I'm just definitely saying, as a representative of the Christian church, he a lot of times says stuff that I don't think he should say.
Right. Well, and I totally agree that the way we act is going to it has a big effect. I feel like I have to be very on my I have to be, I don't know, on my game or on my tiptoes or whatever you want to call it, because like I run a band and there's a lot of people in my band who aren't Christian. And I
Yeah,
feel like I really have to make sure I represent that well, because I may be the only person they see every week who really is like a Christian. So I think that's definitely something you need to represent. And at this point, I mean, he's, lived his whole life kind of being able to do this sort of, uh, like business deals. You can kind
yeah,
of bully people into doing what you want or putting pressure on people. But at this point, I would rather see him. I mean, he can't run for another term. So this is
yeah,
it. And I kind of wish
exactly.
he would take the approach of kill him with kindness more
Yeah,
than other things. And I think there's other moments where he does kind of shine a little bit better than others. But yeah,
that's true.
I don't think this is probably one of the good ones. Because calling someone out publicly like that is a really, I mean, it's really dangerous,
Hmm.
because people will take that and run. And especially like a judge, if they're a local judge or I mean, even if they're like something at the state level, there's going to be people who can find them, and there's going to be
Oh yeah,
people who are just going
and
to
that's
harass
some of the
them.
scariest things
Yeah.
with
I
all of
mean,
this, really.
yeah. I mean, I had, I've talked about this on the podcast where like I made a video and then this one YouTuber, he just kind
Yeah.
of went off, and like I had people for quite a while who were just like sending me nasty, nasty messages, like saying they wanted to hurt me and all these things. And it's like, it's just kind of crazy. I mean, people are going to, that's why you got to
Hunt
be
you down,
careful,
yeah.
because people will take what you say and they'll run with it. And so if he's calling for his, basically that he needs to get fired. I mean, I'm sure there's people picketing, out, like,
Or there at the very least, there could be. I mean, again,
yeah, or
there's
just
more of that potential for sure.
comments online and everything going off. And I mean, and I don't know. I mean, if he really is aiding like gang members, then I would hope that maybe there's more of a discussion behind the scenes of that, or like,
Oh, for sure.
private.
I mean, again, this whole thing, the whole deportation thing, and again, I'm just talking about his comments because the
Right.
deportation thing, that's going to get, he's already successfully gotten rid of a lot of people that were here illegally, a lot of violent criminals, a lot of gang members, and I'm sure other people got caught up in that too. I'm not saying like it's only those people. I'm sure other people get caught up in that too.
Yeah.
But the point is they came here in a way that they shouldn't have, and a lot of them have been deported. I don't doubt that this is going to get tied up in courts now, but
Yeah.
I think that's what Trump has been doing. He has been sprinting. He has
Yeah.
been sprinting so fast because I think he deep down, I think he knows that it's going to eventually get all tied up in court. And so he's
Yeah.
trying to get as much done as he can before the court cases.
Right.
And I think that's what he's doing. And it's already starting to get caught up in court, but at the same time, I mean, the last 2 months have been absolutely insane in terms
Yeah.
of like each day you're like going, "Oh my gosh, what did he do? What did he do?" And it's like, and again, he's trying to do stuff. He's trying to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he
But
is.
but
Well,
anyway, again, I
yeah.
just more than anything, I just wanted to make sure that we did call out, again, because some of our messaging has always been very pro-Trump, and it's like again, I don't necessarily think it's bad to talk about where you stand on politics and hold a conversation. In fact, I think that's actually a good thing for our society to do. We need to hold more conversations.
Yeah, I think
But I
so.
also think it's important to, basically say, hey, there are things about Trump that I really don't like.
Yeah. No, and it is funny because I've had people, some like close friends and some like relatives that what usually happens is they'll say something to me along the lines of like, well, I know you're a Trump guy. And then like, I'll try to kind of go, well, it's not really as simple as just like, because that kind of implies, like, in an instance like this, that I would just be 100% on his side.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no, I think I try to take each situation for what it is.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to say, well, because, I tend to lean right, I just, anything he does, I'm going to be okay with. It's like, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
But the thing is, usually I get that comment, and then the people just go like, I don't want to talk about it. So they say it, but they don't want a response. And then
Yeah.
it's just kind of like, okay, well, I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I get, yeah. And so that was kind of the point that I wanted to bring to the table today,
Yeah.
this fine and wonderful evening. I don't want to spend necessarily a ton of time like dwelling in on it because again, this is, as much as we talk about politics here and there, I don't want to see this become like some major political show or something. That's not
Yeah.
ever been our goal, and it's
No.
still not. So
But I do think I think giving the point of, as Christians, we need to make sure that we're viewing, we're putting like our faith and the way we're supposed to be following God, his laws, above just our political parties.
absolutely.
Like, that needs to be our main, that we need to look everything through a lens as a Christian. And so when something like this happens, we need to be able to say, that's wrong, he shouldn't have done that. And not just blindly say, well, it's good that he did that because, I support him. Yeah, it's, or whatever. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, we don't try to be political necessarily, but it is important to remember those things. So,
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Clear my voice here. So I kind of talked to you right before we started. I want to introduce a new segment tonight.
yes.
And I'm actually super stoked about this. So much so that I created like a little introduction. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the introduction here, and then after that I'm going to tell you kind of my whole thought process, my whole design, and then we'll go from there, and I'll you'll kind of get the idea of it. At least I hope so. If not, you guys can tell me, and you can tell me, and I don't. It's okay. I take criticism really well sometimes. All right. Here we go. New segment, and now life and times of the saints.
That just sounds like I'm having breakfast before I go to school, and it's like the
Yeah.
scriptures in today's world and stuff like that. I can't remember what the name of the show was, but yeah, that's a good intro.
Yeah, so I was actually starting to think about this a couple weeks back, and you know, as Lutherans, we and you and I have talked on this show before about like saints and how we should place them and all this kind of stuff, and it's like, there is a place for saints in the way we should look at saints as Christians, as Lutherans. Now, I think some people go overboard. I think of like the specifically the Roman Catholic Church. I think there's other churches that do as well, by the way, not just the Roman Catholics, but the Roman Catholics in particular. They have a very unique way of looking at the saints. They look at the saints like they're in heaven. They've earned extra merits, and you can pray to the saints, and they can maybe put a good word in for you with God, kind of thing. It's a little bit
Yeah.
bigger than that. It's a little bit more than that, but by and large, that's the kind of the shorthand version of it. But
Mm-hmm.
then comes the other problem is sometimes we look at it and we go, okay, well, if that's the case, then I'm just not going to look at the saints at all. And I think that's
Yeah.
incorrect either as well, because what happens is I always tell people, like, look, you try to kind of almost act out your heroes a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
if your hero is a baseball player, you try to be a baseball player. And if your hero's like a bandmate, you try to be the bandmate. Like whoever your hero is tends to at the very least tends to help along or nudge along your own kind of what you want to be, what you want to look like. And so when we throw away the saints, we end up throwing away all that history of all these people that lived very faithful lives, that lived very good lives. Now, they weren't perfect. They weren't sin-free, and they didn't somehow earn extra merits. No, they were saved by the grace of Christ Jesus. They were cleansed by his blood, just like you and me, just like we are. But they also lived a life where they really expressed their faith. They really were very faithful Christians.
Yeah.
And so it's important that we kind of do actually take a chance to look at them. Now, last week, as I was looking ahead, I found a saint or two and I was like, oh, maybe I should just talk about it. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, what I should do is I should kind of write it um, in a in a more, I don't know, a more unique format. And look, I'll be
Yeah.
honest with you guys. I'll be honest with anybody that listens. I'll be honest. I took as my inspiration like Paul Harvey and like what's his name, Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs and his podcast of the way I heard it and everything. I'm
Yeah.
not as awesome as he is. I'm just not. And I'm willing to admit that. But that being said, I wrote about a saint today, and I wrote about him kind of in a similar structure. Now, is it identical? No, of course not. One of the things with Paul Harvey as well as Mike Rowe is the fact that they're usually talking about somebody that you know about. And because you know about them, um, a lot of times that's kind of the fun, the mystery of it. Some of these saints you might know about, some of them you won't. If this goes over well and if people like it, I'm going to keep doing it. If it goes over terribly, I'll stop. I'll stop. Um, but without further ado, then I'd like to start us off for our first night ever of the life and times of the saints. All right, here we go. Faith, perseverance, and wisdom. When Alex got up in the morning, this is what he was told. When Alex went to his very well-to-do private school, this is what he's taught. Coming from a Christian family, this is what he learned. Faith, perseverance, and wisdom. That is what it took. Not everyone loved Christians. Heck, even now, not everyone loves Christians. There were people who disagreed. There were people who thought it was foolish. There were people who thought that it was the stupidest thing known to mankind. But those were people. But they were not Alex. Faith, perseverance, and wisdom. The faith part seemed to come easy for Alex. Maybe easy isn't the correct term, but whatever you want to call it, Alex firmly believed in Christ so much that he even, to a degree, renounced worldly pleasures. Not necessarily something we normally think of, maybe during Lent when we give up something temporarily so we can focus all the more on Christ, but no, this was something else. This was something more. Alex did not want to go after money or power. He didn't try to beat the race to the political hot seat or own the big home or whatever it happened to be. No, Alex had faith. He had faith in Christ Jesus, and even though he came from a family that was well off, he did not see that as a goal. He had faith. Faith, perseverance, and wisdom. Having faith is one thing, but having perseverance is another. Eventually, Alex was made a bishop. You might say a pastor, but let's face it, the word bishop just sounds cooler. So yes, Alex was a bishop, even of his hometown. And the older he got, the more he did not just have faith, but the more he was open about it, vocal about it, made no attempt to hide his faith. And well, for him, to be so open was not necessarily the popular thing to do. To be open about your faith was something that, well, where Alex lived was so unpopular that people tended to look down on Christians. Even more, they tended to hate Christians. Wait, even more. At times, they would threaten the life of Christians. So bad was the hatred that it wasn't uncommon for at least at times anyway, to physically assault someone who is a Christian, for physical assaults to take place. In fact, when you had someone who boldly and openly spoke the faith, but was also abused or suffered physical assaults, or worse, it was often said that they were making a confession, a statement of faith. So you might say, much like Usher, Alex made a confession. However, unlike Usher, his confession was his Christian faith. Some of these physical assaults were bad. Some of them were even condoned or conducted by the government. When a person was assaulted to a level that left a lasting scar, not just a psychological scar or psychological trauma, but in fact a physical scar, that person was at times called a confessor. for they made a confession. Alex fit in. Alex had persevered. Faith, perseverance, and wisdom. Through the pain, through the agony, Alex was still bishop, though eventually he moved to another church. In our day, we might say he took a call and left his hometown to a church that was a little bit more prominent, but also a place that could be a little bit more dangerous, at least for Christians. Even more dangerous than his hometown. Or maybe the town had nothing to do with it, but Alex remembered. Alex remembered the words, faith, perseverance, and wisdom. Alex had faith. He had persevered through many hardships, and while he grew older and wiser, he also wanted to share that knowledge. And where better to do that than a more centralized town, a more prominent town? And so he did what, at least something I would think of as great. He created a library, a big library. Now, it wasn't too long after this that the politician that he wanted to win didn't. A new leader came up, and this one really thought that Christians were stupid. At this time, it was not uncommon to get rid of or destroy those things that you thought were stupid, especially if you were in power and thought that they might take control. And so it is that while Alex was old and had plenty of gray and white hairs, he was also killed for his faith in Christ. Faith, perseverance, and wisdom. It is but 3 words, but they are words that led Alexander of Jerusalem through his life. They were words that he lived by. When he swore off worldly pleasures, they were words he lived by when he became the bishop of Cappadocia. It wasn't considered wise by all to let the man known as Origen speak, but he wasn't the only one that did it. And we'll have to save that story, the story of Origen, for a different day. But he was considered wise and steadfast when he was physically maimed and took the name of confessor. And then, even when he became the bishop of Jerusalem, where he built a library to share his knowledge, he was considered wise, to the point where these 3 words, faith, perseverance, and wisdom, came to represent him when he and other bishops were put to death under the rule of Roman Emperor Decius in 251 AD. Now, while I feel like I didn't say much at all, I would be negligent if I didn't also say some of the legends that go along with him. When he was imprisoned in Caesarea before being put to death, the legend goes that they had a hard time torturing and killing him. Not only did he simply survive the tortures, but in fact, when they would bring wild beasts to kill him, the animals simply licked his feet. So now you know about Alexander of Jerusalem. If you are a Catholic, his feast day is March 18th. If you're a Lutheran, you can still remember Alexander of Jerusalem. You recognize that he was a sinner like the rest of us, but his faith was something to be modeled. And so maybe you just read about him or listened to some story about him, but however you decide to remember or commemorate Mr. Alexander, just be reminded that it is not about worshiping the man, but remembering him as a hero of the faith. Thanks for listening to the Life and Times of the Saints. There you go. What do you think? What do you think?
I think that was great. I think you need to play the intro music on the way out as well.
Oh, okay, here we go.
But
And now, Life and Times of the Saints.
oh,
there you go.
I like that. That was good. Yeah, because I think we do. It is weird. Like I grew up in a non-denominational church, so saints was like almost taboo. It was like, oh, you don't talk about saints because that's like crazy stuff that Catholics do,
Yeah.
And so it is interesting because, yeah, I mean, when you just think about it as heroes of the faith, people that, are worth looking into, just how did they live their life, and what type of things did we get from them, like lessons. I think it's really interesting because I've never even heard of Alexander of Jerusalem. So
Yeah. I've heard of him briefly. I will say this: I got his library confused a little bit with the Library of Alexandria,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
which was a super famous library that burned down before Christ.
Oh,
So,
gotcha. Yeah.
so
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. So he built a library,
yeah.
and
So
then.
so the I mean, so he comes from an affluent family. He has like the best of everything. Kind of renounces all of it, really.
Hmm.
Um, this was, in 251 AD, this was not necessarily uncommon of Christians. A lot of Christians firmly believed that renunciation of like worldly things was, the stripe of a good, solid Christian faith.
Yeah.
Um, not everybody though. I mean, again, his parents were both Christians and they were affluent. So, it's not like it's just one of those things like a lot of people did. I think
Hmm.
specifically of St. Augustine, um, of St. Ambrose, and so on and so forth. A lot of people in this time period, and a little after it, actually did this. Um, but yeah, so he eventually, learns the faith. He becomes the bishop of Cappadocia, which is basically the pastor in the big church in that area.
Hmm.
And then after a while, he eventually moves to Jerusalem, which, a lot of people think, well, Jerusalem, like that's square one. That's where you want to be. But the truth is realize like that's still it's only 251 AD, so or 200 AD. That's still a hotbed of a lot of Roman activity. Rome is still very
Uh,
powerful. Um, Notice all the stories we have throughout Holy Scripture with the Pharisees and stuff. And the Pharisees have just recently, in the last 100 to, 150 years or so, been put down by Rome. And so Rome is like up on edge,
hmm.
when it comes to like especially Jews and Christians were kind of considered like Jewish light. So that was kind of where, however you want to look at it, that's kind of the
Yeah,
way
yeah, yeah.
they were viewed.
That's. I mean, we kind of have. We have that same feeling with certain things. Because like, I mean, some people say Lutherans are just Catholic light. Or Catholic
Well,
zero
we
sugar.
yeah, that's right. That's right. We got rid of all the stuff that's bad for you.
Yeah.
Um, oh man. But yeah, so that's kind of the story of Alexander of Jerusalem. Now, I will say this: as much as I looked and searched and everything else, usually you celebrate a saint or you commemorate. That is basically you remember. You remember the saint on the day that they died.
Ah.
Um, it seems that for the Eastern Orthodox, they tend to commemorate him, dare I say, in like June or something like that. Roman Catholics, it's March 18th, but there's no indication of exactly when he died in terms of dates.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
I don't know why this date is chosen over another. I didn't go that far down the rabbit hole. So
Yeah. But we commemorate with a feast, correct?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, that
yeah, so,
sounds.
yeah. So here's always a funny thing too. Like if you ever look in like your Lutheran service book, which is your hymnal, and it has all the dates like the commemoration of the saints. Like realize like those are all like special holidays.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you were like, man, I want to have a celebration. Like, dude, look up on the calendar. I guarantee you there's something to celebrate. It's
Yeah.
it really is almost like how there's like an international day for like everything nowadays.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like pizza day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's kind of the same
National
way with
hug
the
drug.
saints. Like there's always a saint day. There
That that's gotta. I mean, that's why Christians I think are so happy. If you have things to celebrate every day, that's pretty great.
yeah.
I don't mind that at all. Okay, I'm gonna have to start looking up. Is it? Where do you look that up? Where do you find all the
I'm I'm
days in
I'm
the
actually
calendar?
looking for it right now. List of international. What is the All right. I just boom. International days happening now. I clicked the link. Hopefully it doesn't shut me down. It's just funny. It's funny. Here we are on the podcast. We're just waiting. We're waiting for the
Yeah.
page to load.
Well, yeah, you gotta find this stuff out. It's interesting. I
That's
think it's I do envy, as someone who didn't grow up with any sort of traditions or much, besides Easter and Christmas. That's pretty much it, and so I quite like Reformation Sunday and Transfiguration Sunday. Like I like it's fun. It's fun to have kind of these little little markers in the year, something to celebrate, and so I enjoy it.
Well, everybody, this is kind of an awkward thing. We had some internet issues last night, and for the rest of the podcast, which goes on for about another 30, 40 minutes, um, well, you can't hear me. All you can hear is Casey. And while I know it's really interesting for everybody to listen to one side of a conversation, I thought it would be best to kind of create a good stopping point, and then just alert you guys that, yeah, apparently we had some technical difficulties. And I was unaware of these technical difficulties until I went to review the podcast on the next morning. So even right now, it's actually March 19th. Um, so so yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of come on and let you guys know that we had some technical difficulties. We went on with a discussion over memes on Facebook, and then also with our church chatter, which basically focused on Lent. I'll save that question though for another time. We'll get back to it whenever we can actually have this without having technical difficulties. So anyway, sorry about that. Sorry about the technical difficulties. God's blessings to all of you, and hopefully we'll catch you next time. Bye.